who might like to share something?
I'll go ahead and share.
Awesome.
For me, I think one of the key takeaways from a previous session was to look at the problem from different angles. So for me, I'm developing a product at the moment, but I had only considered my single idea as the solution to go forward with, which, you know, if it works, great. But to better increase my odds, I've started focusing on the problem that I'm actively trying to solve and considering what other possible ways are there to do it that might be simpler, might be more complicated, might be better, might be worse, to get all of these ideas on the table. Because I'm building a prototype, I don't want to then go further than I already have and find that I'm just wasting my time.
Awesome. Great learnings, Robert. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I could not agree more, right? You want to be looking at these things from as many different angles as possible. What solutions fit together or interact with and around your problem? And what is it that the customer, you know, desperately needs, right? And that is going to be a big part of today's session as well. So taking those first learnings from last week and putting this into the mindset of really discovering your customer. So with that, we will kick into the workshop. So today's goals very much in terms of discovering that kind of thrill of deep customer understanding. Why is it important? What can we learn from it? We're going to introduce you to that kind of customer development process. You also might be wondering why it's called customer development and not customer research. You might be able to figure that out by the time we get there. And then lastly, kind of building those customer personas and your primary research plans as well. So lots of cool activities, lots of structure, lots of resources. And as ever, we have our Miro board as well, which I think, in fact, I will post the link to right away. And we'll pop the slides up after the session as well, so you can kind of go through this. And of course, you can see last week's slides as well. So there is the Miro board. And to kick us off, to warm up today's activities, oh my gosh, I'll tell you what, having a cursor over two large screens takes some finding sometimes.
Just as Mark's doing that, how's everyone finding Miro? Everyone on board with it and happy and find it useful?
Yeah, I think it's great. The first time I saw it, it was a bit odd because I've never used anything like it before, but actually it's quite intuitive. I found it interesting that I could zoom all the way in and see things that are tiny. I didn't expect to be able to do that.
Yeah, very much. When I worked with Mark on this the first time, he used to make sure you had to zoom in to get onto a tiny thing immediately, on making sure you saw the big picture and small picture was part of the narrative there. So yeah, look out for that if he sneaks one of those in again.
So there we go. I mean, speaking of, if you look at the big picture here, you'll also see we do have a startup guide on the right-hand corner that, again, you can download and browse through. And that's got a ton of resources and tips throughout it from all our, you know, years and decades worth of building businesses as a group as well. So please do check that out. But for now, if you want to click on the first activity, so you will see that here. What is the first thing we ask entrepreneurs, which is here. And I've also put the direct link in chat as well. So you should see a page that looks like this. You might want to zoom in or out if you're looking at something that's completely different. And what we're doing here is imagine you're, you know, you've just pitched your business to a potential advisor, investor, someone who's going to help you, someone who's a startup expert. And what we want to kind of do to kick it off is actually, what are they trying to understand? What are the first questions they are going to ask? And then we'll figure out why afterwards. So if you go to the left-hand side of the page, or if you double click on it first, you'll see the sticky notes, and then you can just draw a shape and type in whatever you might like. So what's the first thing that people are going to ask you? What are they trying to establish and figure out when you're explaining your business? What's the most important thing they want to understand?
The problem you're trying to solve.
So if you write it down on the page under what is the first question, and if you've already answered that, if you scroll to the right hand side, you'll see what is the next question. What is the follow-up? What's the second question that experts are going to ask? And if you're not in this link already, we've just posted the link in chat. I'll post it again. That goes directly through to this page. You don't need to log in. And if you haven't used this before, then this is a great opportunity to learn. Double click on the page, create a post-it note, pick your favorite color, and type away.
Everyone also, I see a lot of you huddled in the same place. Remember, it's right click on the mouse to move the whole tab so you can drag it to be in the center of your page. Don't worry about zooming in and out, just drag and get going again.
If it's not loading, it might be a little slow if you've got a really slow internet, because don't forget Teams is super intensive on bandwidth and computer speed. If you're really struggling, you can pop messages in the chat, and we will debrief this stuff as a group as well. If you've got a tablet, it's great on tablets to engage with, because it's quite intuitive using fingers. Okay, so great point, Ed. Someone's already written that inside the box, which is fantastic. So really, we're just answering what's the first question, and indeed after that, what's the next thing that experts are going to try and figure out about your business, right? What do people ask you when you pitch your business to them? What do they want to know?
Remember, this isn't customers, this isn't jumping into the people you might be selling. It's more, what do you reckon queries that people might have, or what avenue they might be taking on that first engagement with someone that's going to start critiquing your business, your idea.
I will put that on the table for you, Ed. Awesome. We have a lot more comments on the first one than the second one. So what are the follow-up questions? What are the first things that people actually want to understand about your business? Lots of ways of looking at this. And one of the things you'll notice in the way we do our sessions is we're always challenging the entrepreneurial mindset, right? Getting you out of your head and perhaps what you might think is the way that you should behave, because rarely is the way you think you should behave as a student building their first business is how people who've built 5 businesses think. How will you measure ROI?
Vicky, are you struggling to get on the Miro board there?
Man, BA first year at University. अरे मतलब कैसे चला रही थी?
Right, okay.
Alrighty. Let's go through these. So what is the first thing that people are trying to understand about your business? What are the first questions that people will ask? So let's go through these. How will it make money? Great question. But how often have you asked, how will it make money when you don't know what it is? And how on earth do you answer the question of how you're going to make money if you don't know what it is? So let's go higher up, right? What else have we got here? Why is this worthwhile? Awesome. We've got quite a lot here around the what problem are you solving. So clearly you guys were enjoying last week's session. So tied directly into this, and we've got how will this help customers, right? So it's what is the problem you're solving and how will it help customers? These things are basically the first thing that anyone wants to understand about your business, right? Because when people look at businesses, they've got no idea if it's going to succeed. 90% of businesses are just flat out going to fail, right? If you ask Howard or I, is my business any good or is my idea any good? Honestly, we don't have a Scoobies. However, if you can explain what the problem is and who it's for, then you're starting with that perfect positioning that says you really understand the problem. And then it suggests that you're going to have good ideas and you're going to understand how to solve the problem. So it all begins with customer and problem. The follow-up to this, we've got lots of awesome points here.
So just going back to that, does anyone have any questions of why it's important to put the problem at the center? Is there anyone questioning that at all? Because I know sometimes mindset, it's the money default, or you need to think of it. Does everyone understand why we're putting the problem at the center? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Right. No, because some people don't. People think that it needs to be money focused or centric towards that. So it's really key that we understand the problem, because that is why the second and follow-up is normally where people start going and putting their own slant and where their own view comes from it. The next question might be around money, and there might be around why your solution is needed, but it's pivotal that that first starting point is solving a problem. And then it's the second question where people put their own perspective and own slants on it.
Exactly. So we've got some awesome points here, all of which are questions that people want to get to as soon as possible. How are you going to measure ROI? Before you can figure out how to measure it, though, what actually is the return on investment? Like, what are you actually trying to do? Then we've got benefits, right? Absolutely brilliant. We definitely always want to see benefits over features. When you launch, though, are you going to create 100 different benefits for your customer, or are you really just going to do one and do it well? You don't even know which one you should do, again, until you understand the customer. So every single one of these questions still relates back to the customer. How are you making money? Well, how much money does the customer have to spend on this? What is their desire to spend on this? Why is your solution the right answer? Who are your customers? All coming in here absolutely brilliantly. The way this question is often phrased by investors, mentors, people like Howard and so forth, really before we hear the idea, before we hear anything, the questions that are always asked in different formats are why now and why you? What's your edge and why now? And again, that all comes down to problem, customer, and then everything else is built on top of that foundation.
And this is where we start to also introduce, and especially when it comes to you explaining it and articulating, is talking around value and starting to add the value of why now. Okay, why is it adding value now? Why was the value not there 5 years ago or in 10 years time? Why is it that you are the person? How will you add value to this solution, and that it's not that anyone will do it? And you start to see, if you see that value that you're adding to your customer, it starts to add on to that problem piece, and it starts to be able to create a lot stronger foundation than what others can explain. Because by putting value and solving and putting that problem fundamentally first, then why you, why now, that value and that value creation is something that comes through and falls down the line. But it starts with this foundation.
Also,
yeah, Mark, I was waiting for you.
Great. So the point being, all of these questions are absolutely brilliant questions. They're just built on top of understanding that problem first and foremost. Because again, whilst we are all, or whilst there are lots of people who are experts in building businesses, or I might be a B2B expert, I might be a climate expert, education expert, it still doesn't mean I understand your customer or what you're doing, right? Don't underestimate the lack of knowledge that others have. So again, this is about proving that you are the expert in what you are doing. So we had a good question about list what data about customer development they're looking for. It's not about the specific data, it's about proving that you actually understand the customer, and it's very, very obvious when people understand the customer and when they don't, which is why we'll go to our next question before we hit the slides. Oh, I can tell my computer's getting tired. I've been in workshops and pitches all day. So last question for this little activity is specifically, like, why is speaking to customers so important, and what is it that you can actually learn about your customers? Again, another way of looking at it, rephrase a question. I'm a big fan. If you don't understand a question, simply rephrase it. What would you like to learn from your customers? And there is the link once again into this board.
You beat me to it. If you're struggling, please move around, see if it can see anything, or zoom back into places, and it should start to appear on the screen.
I like that someone's remembered the example from last week. If you're selling a cushion, right, it's only a useful solution, or a chair is only useful if the customer is sitting, right? There will be other solutions to the problem you are solving, and you need to see that so you can see how you compete against them.
Yeah, absolutely love that. And it's really being aware, because that starts to feed into other things around how your customers view you and also your competition. Yeah, it's Dyson hand dryer as competition is a paper towel. Some people think it's because it's not electric, it's not the same, but they all feed in. They're trying to do a similar job, and it's seeing how that affects and who the customer is, what other things and they value.
Awesome. These are fantastic points. Please keep going if you've got more ideas. Would anyone like to explain one of the things that they've written down, why they put it down? Who would like to go first?
Hi, I'll volunteer myself to go first then. So I am Matthew. I've just clicked on my post-it there. And I think when I've been working with UX and UI design stuff before, it's actually trying to understand what the problem itself is and not what the problem is perceived to be. And then also trying to think, in reality, it might make sense for something to work a certain way, but the way that people live in different contexts, cultures, different industries, etc., the reality of how it's used in their workflows or beyond that in their lifestyles might be very, very different to what is actually sensible or logical. And so to design it with that in mind while you're working through a problem.
Awesome. Really, really awesome point, Matthew. Thank you. Who else would like to share?
So I've gone in the top left. I also wrote the back pain analogy just because I remembered it from last time. But I've said to understand what the specific problem is, why they need the solution or not, how much they could afford to pay for it, and what else you could do for them. It might be that in talking to the customer, what you think is your customer, you might find out they don't need your solution, but you could uncover someone else that might. One of the things that I'm considering down the line, if my idea takes off, is I could potentially market it to the NHS. When I first came up with my idea, that's not something I had considered at all. I was single-minded on one particular customer.
Yep.
But it could be there's much more out there.
So just on that idea then, is if you're speaking to customers, is no, your product isn't for me, good or bad news to you?
Both. It's a shame that I've not got them as a customer. Oh well. But it's insightful. So for example, in some of my market research, one person said no because their business is too small. So
Perfect.
That's great for me because I know that it's something that they might need, but not right now because it's not worth the investment for them. They're too small. So that means I need to target companies that are slightly larger than them. And then if they're going to say no, then I can take on board why and address that.
Exactly, that's really well. And it's going on from Mark's point, I know we discussed in the first round, of size companies. If you're looking at growing and you know that actually they can only deal with you when they're at 25 customers, that's when you go back to them, and that's where you go. But understanding that because is where that starts getting really weaned out in this focus, and having conversations with them. Because if you hear no and shut down, you'll never know. And some people then try and add bolt-ons, go, oh, that said no, so I need to add this to my product, or I need to add this. And quite quickly, something that can evolve, and it time and time again, is someone tries to become everything for everyone. And that's not what we're trying to get to here. We're trying to really understand and build customer profiles so you can be quite clear of who you're communicating to. And then when those experts come and speak to you for that first round, that you can go, oh, you know what, actually, we're not dealing with them now. This is who we're focusing on. The reasons are X, Y, Z. And this is what we're looking at rolling out further down the line. And like you say, is the NHS could be later down the stages, down the line, because you know what needs to happen to get them as a customer. Right.
Love it. Astrid's made a great point in the comments that you can make the customer realize why the product might be for them. And it also, it was made on the board a little bit as well. It's also a two-way process. The reason why we call it customer development and not customer research is because you are also developing these people as customers, right? Especially when you're in a new market, for instance. You know, let's imagine a world where Howard has a really messy beard instead of the very lovely groomed one that he has. You know, he might not think that he needs beard products to look after it, right? So in you doing research to understand, do you buy beard products? How do you look after your skin? What do you spend on beauty and well-being? You know, you're also actually influence him that it's like, oh, maybe I should increase my spend on my well-being, my beauty, and start investing in a nice comb or beard oils, whatever it might be, right? So it is an active development process. Every single person you ever speak to from here on out should go in your CRM, your customer relationship management tool. And there's free versions. You could build an Excel without batting an eyelid. You can use Airtable, which is free. And you're just tracking names, emails, phone numbers, and when are you next going to talk to them? Because they are consistently your first sales opportunities, as well as learning opportunities. So thank you for sharing that, Astrid. That's fantastic.
So there's just one I'd like to jump into here. Someone's put on there what solutions they would like to see. Do you want to expand on that a bit more? Anyone who that was? Okay, no worries if you don't come forward. It's just trying to see what you try to see and why you think. Are you expecting them to give you a solution, or are you trying to say or see if they reframe the problem back to you in a different way? I was just trying to work out there, because something that also happens is, like Mark was saying around development, is trying to understand the customer, and it's something around we'll come on and talk about later, is the conversation and where you'll go from. But it's quite key to indicate and important to indicate here, it's open questions and not to be very closed of, do you need this product? Because that shuts people down and it stops that development and discovery very early on when you're speaking to customers, and it's just trying to develop it and go from there. So finding out their solution of a different approach to your problem could be a great way of doing that, and just hearing how they view the problem in their lives gives you a raft more of ideas. It's having a conversation rather than going in. But we'll come revisit that in a bit.
Nice. I'm going to pick out the narrowing down and identifying early adopters. One of the consistent things that every business and business owner struggles with is focus. Everyone is trying to do too much, right? You have your big picture vision that you're aiming for. You can, you know, as a visionary, you can see so many of the different things that you can, you know, build and sell and create to get to wherever you want to go. you clearly cannot do that all in one go. The more you focus on product number one, service number one, that very first thing you're going to do, and then your first, 3 customers, the more you will actually be able to grow, because then you'll start bringing in revenue, you build your team, you invest in product number 2, you then sell product number 2 to everyone who's already bought product number 1, which is easier than winning new customers, step by step. So I absolutely love that focus, and I love the emphasis on early adopters. Early adopters are raving fans. They are the people who just absolutely adore what you do, and they go sell it to other people. As an example, I have some fancy, Howard laughs because he's had the pitch, right? Some software and some tech that measures everything to do with my performance, from sleep, strain. I think it's phenomenal. It's a premium product, but it makes me a better entrepreneur, right? And it makes me more productive. So the price value to it is almost irrelevant to me, because I know the impact it has on me. And because I love that, I tell people, and other people go, oh my gosh, I should give that a go. And I've sold like 6 or 7 versions or products of these to people just because I care, right? Occasionally you get a free month for it or something like that. But you've got to put faith in your early adopters and look after them, and be ready for them to be hypercritical as well, right? They might give you loads of feedback, but it's because they care about what you're doing, because you're solving the problem, not because your solution isn't good enough, right? So treat early adopters like gold, love them, look after them, create customer focus groups, bring them closer together. If you introduce them to each other, odds are they're going to be similar-minded people, similar interests. So much value in that. And again, all comes down to knowing your customer. So this is really, really, really awesome work here. And others can see problems that you might not. Also really easy and obvious benefits. I remember when I first had this, it didn't have any wake up alarm on, which was so obvious. And I submitted that as feedback. I know loads of other people did as well. And then eventually they put that in another version of the product. Maybe it was on their roadmap, maybe it wasn't. I'm confident it was. They're a big business now. But certainly when it's early days, unlikely. Awesome. So good job, everybody. And with that, let's head back to the slides. Oh, a little bit of feedback from Ed. One of my early adopters became quite frustrated with my initial sales approach when in turn allowed me to improve my sales approach to make my business better overall. Awesome, right? Again, it shows that the early adopters, they care enough to give you the feedback, right? To give you another example, I have one of our clients is the Lego Group. They've been doing a huge request for proposal for another piece of software, and they told me how it was going. And the guy was like, one of the companies in the process, their head of sales is an asshole. And they're like, we're the Lego Group. We don't work with assholes. And it was literally done. The whole, they had an amazing tech, amazing product, so many reasons to buy it. But it was just if you don't have the right people skills, it's done. And that was game over for them, right? If they care about you, they will give you the feedback that can help you change. And if they don't care, they really won't.
Just on that quickly, Ed, when you got that feedback, how did that initially make you feel? Because initially, when we get that coming back at us, it's that first engagement. We're just about to go into that first engagement with customers. How did that, if you don't mind sharing, how did that kind of make you feel about it?
So at first I was kind of I wouldn't say offended, but I was a bit oh, okay, damn, he's not happy with the way I'm doing this. So I better change it. And it basically made me make things a lot more simple and presentable for them, which, totally changed everything and allowed me to kind of improve my sales strategy overall, really.
Brilliant. And that is, it sounds like as you went through that process, it affected the product and the service itself, because then you knew how customers viewed it and how they wanted it to be sold. So it affects a lot. So yeah, glad that you were able to turn it around. Well played.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually informed so much to do with how I'm going to present, pricing and everything on my platform, actually. So it was great.
Yeah. That hypercritical early critique of a business and just any approach it opens your eyes and it makes you realize, oh, I did not see it, because you're so immersed. So that step back, mentors, different people, conversations, really key.
Yeah. And then it also works the other way as well, right? You know, I've got well over 10 years now of kind of enterprise sales experience. You know, that's good experience. And you know, other people might get cocky or think, yeah, you know what you're doing, and you know, rinse and repeat the same formula or something like that. Because of the pandemic, I built an entirely new way of doing sales with our enterprises using Miro. And the first time I did that, I was really nervous because, you know, Miro does take a bit of getting used to. We had an activity to help them through that, you know, and we were selling to 40-year-olds, 50-year-olds plus, you know, not young whippersnappers like you guys who can figure this out in no time at all. We got halfway through the workshop, and, you know, I don't rest on my laurels. We had a break, and I went, before we go on a quick break, I thought I'd check in. How are you finding this as a workshop to better understand our business so far? I wasn't even prepared for the positive feedback they gave us. Their head of procurement was like, this is phenomenal. I've never seen anyone engage us like this online before. Everything's so clearly laid out. We can see how much work you put into this and how much we mean to you to win as business. Like, we're absolutely loving this. It really is yours to lose at this point. And we're like, wow, amazing. So then guess what that does to your confidence when you're halfway through a pitch and they've just said, you're literally nailing this, it's yours to lose. It's like confidence goes up, quality of rest of pitch goes up. So again, when you're talking to your customers, you're asking for feedback at every stage, it really is groundbreakingly beneficial. So with that, who else has spoken to any customers? Who's given it a go? Potential customers or otherwise? Anyone else tried?
I have, and I've had someone say that they would be interested in trying my idea.
Nice.
But that's as far as it's gone. So
Sorry.
Sorry?
No, carry on, please.
I was just going to say, I gave them, it was someone I'd worked with before, and they had gone off and started their own firm. And because I had a good relationship with him, I thought I could approach him as the first one, which seemed to go relatively well. But that's pretty much where it's ended. I told him about the idea. He said it was interesting and would be looking to try it.
Cool.
And I said, you know, this is how we can go about doing that. And he's sort of gone off the radar.
Okay.
Right.
Brilliant. Well done for doing that, because so many people come up with a good idea and don't even get to that first stage. Like, honestly, the funnel of how many people we talk to in this type of setting before they'd even get onto this type of program is 10 times the amount of the people that are on this program. So getting through that first stage is a massive achievement. So what I love about this statement that Mark Scarber, who have you spoken to about this problem, right? Different perspective. Have any of you told people about the problem? Because there's a big difference between speaking to someone about it and told them about a problem. Does anyone think that they've fallen into that trap? Yeah, do you want to share? If you think you have, please tell us about it. Marlene?
Hello. Hi.
Hi.
No, actually, I have a question. So I'm in fashion, and I would like to make my own label and so on. And I think like fashion design is like one of the hardest markets because there's so much design out there, and it's so much similar design. So it's like really hard to kind of like pitch an idea or one model. So I would like to know like what would be, for example, the first step to reach out to a customer, because I mean usually people do it, for example, over social media, but it's getting really hard, like on Instagram or whatever. People don't see your stuff anymore. It's just too much stuff out there.
Okay. Right. I just want to jump in here, something about fashion and clothes. everyone wears clothes, except that maybe a few small communities across the globe. Everyone wears clothes, and this is the really exciting part about speaking to and telling people about an opportunity. If you can start getting the ball rolling by having conversations, not just solely with your mum and your dad and your best friends, those people are a bit further contact, but have spoken to them about and start gathering and canvassing information around how they view clothes. What is the issues they're seeing with it at the moment? Is it supply chain? Is it sustainability? Finding out these initial nuggets that you can then go into and go further into actually going, right, well, this is the group of people I'm focusing on. If it's environmental, you will be focusing on those people that care about environmental sustainable practices within clothing, and you will target that. So going very broad on social media is quite a challenge because you don't know the target. The whole premise of how social media works is algorithms and people plugging into specific areas of interest, and they'll go to that. If you're still very wide and broad, you will struggle to get there. So if it is fashion, is it clothing? Everyone wears clothes. Start having conversations. Find out what the key things are from those people that are trends that you need to focus on, and then you can start growing of how your customer development will grow. Because this process is exactly of how your customer is. It develops. You will understand it. You'll become quicker and leaner through it, and making sure of how you get there will evolve. So first things first, speak to people in your immediate zone, and then start spanning out from there. Don't try and throw the net miles wide immediately, because you will struggle to find, and you'll get lost quite easily.
And then never tell anyone
Thank
that you
you.
think fashion is harder than any other industry ever again.
Nah, it's just so much out there. And I mean, for example, I did
That wasn't a statement that needed a reply.
yeah, no.
I promise you. As soon as you convey opinions to people, you're asking for someone to push back against an opinion. And as business owners, it's like, our opinions are totally irrelevant. No one cares, right? What people care about is, are you solving problems, and how are you improving other people's lives? And the best business owners out there, the best entrepreneurs, they solve problems day in, day out for their customers, and their customers will pay them whatever they need to pay them to do that, right?
Yeah.
And you know, also, like, it is just so difficult to build a business. It doesn't matter what space you're in, it's really difficult. The stats are against you. It's hard graft. You're going to have late nights and work long hours. You're going to get points where you're lonely, and that's why you need to have programs like this to ask for help, build your network, get lots and lots of support, and then you can figure out like the easy wins, the things, the tools, tips and tactics, and so forth. And so, yeah, we're going to talk very specifically in the next half of this session about how do you find those individuals, where are they, and so forth. But I'm conscious to move forwards in terms of time. So let's also flip the problem. I like to inverse everything. What happens if you don't speak to customers? Well, let's be clear, you probably won't end up solving their problems unless you're incredibly lucky. They then won't use your product, and it doesn't matter how innovative, beautiful, affordable or product it is, it will fail. So let me give you a multi-billion-dollar example. Who uses a Nokia phone? Who uses a BlackBerry? Absolutely none of you. Nokia were investing tens, if not hundreds of millions into both phone development, research, and customer development. But here's the trick. If you go to your customers and say, how do I improve this phone? They are only going to give you solutions that are going to improve this phone. How do you improve this phone? Bigger screen, nicer camera, better software. That's pretty much it. And when it came to the mid 2000s, how do you improve a phone? Bigger keyboard, bigger screen, better software. People don't tell you, oh, what if you put music in it? What if it had really fast internet connection? What if you got rid of the buttons? These are not things that people will tell you when you start leading them down the rabbit hole. If you ask people, how do I improve Blockbuster Video? They'll say greater selection, lower prices, more deals, all the obvious stuff, right? They will not say, hey, I've heard of this thing called the internet. Have you thought about shifting your entire business model towards streaming, creating a brand new service, and then marketing it to become one of the biggest, most influential companies in the world? That is not what customer development is going to tell you when you ask them those questions. So yes, Ed, bang on. It's your job to think outside of the box, but it's also your job when doing customer development to help your potential customers think outside of the box as well, right? If you ask me, how do I improve my posture while sitting down? I will only give you responses while sitting down. It won't occur to me to go, I could stand up, I could exercise, I could do yoga, I could have a home, I could get a Peloton bike, I could whatever, right? None of those things will enter the framework. So this is, again, why that customer development is so important, and you've got to think laterally. So a few little examples, people who are really great at this, anthropologists, product designers, architects, used to thinking laterally, and being like really meticulous with planning. Because what you don't want is this, right? Push sign on a pull door, right? Or vice versa, who knows? The difference between user experience and design can be as basic as that, right? You have to understand how people are going to actually use your product or your service versus how you think they will use your service. So for those of you who haven't perhaps done any customer development yet, which is okay, but let's figure out why. Answer me this: what has stopped you from speaking to potential customers so far?
Go on, I'll throw one out. When I was working for a startup, it was scary. It was scary to just go out and try and speak to customers. And you're going into a new environment, and it is just, how I know I'm still new in this arena. What's the first stage I should do?
Mm-hmm. We've got a hand up. Yeah, so Andrea, you're worried about how to actually interpret what it is they tell you? I always look at that as a great problem to have. Sometimes when you're running a business, all you really have are problems, but the quality of problems get better, right? So the first thing is, how do I speak to 100 people? And then the next thing is, then how do I actually make sense of this? And then in terms of data protection, honestly, you don't really need to worry too much. Like when you start out, like if you're speaking to someone on the street and asking for their opinions on their favorite kind of chocolate, I don't think people are going to come at you with data protection concerns. If you're worried about how you store their data, store data offline, store it on a secure server, simple stuff. You should not be defeated by GDPR. So yes, it's intimidating, conveying rough ideas and making them believe in you. Well, let's make this really easy. When you're doing customer development, you don't need to convey any ideas to them whatsoever, and you don't need to make them believe in you. You just need to listen.
Guys, that is, I think, actually probably one of the best statements I've seen in one of these workshops, is remember where you are in the journey. This is a really exciting process, but there's a reason that people like Mark and I can come in and do these as a job, because there is a formula. There is processes and gates that you need to go through. And when someone goes, oh, I started a business and it just worked, like they're unbelievably they're the outlier. It's not something that just happens. They will all go through this. And also when they try and evolve and innovate, they will normally fail because they've never gone through it. You don't need, that first person you speak to does not need to buy your product. And just on this, your friends are one of the most dangerous people to do your full customer development around. And like Mark laughs because we've had this conversation so many times, but you've probably already been there. In school, there was always that person going to set up a clothing company. They might have been your friend. You're like, yes, I'll buy a t-shirt. Sure, it'd be 20 quid. How many of you actually bought the t-shirt? Probably none of you. You probably thought, oh, the one down, the Nike jumper t-shirt's better. I'll go with that. And your friends, as much as they'll love you, they'll at one point they'll crack and say, yeah, great idea, or something like that. But go out. You don't need to sell to that first person. You just need to listen and find out some information, and that will start evolving, because at the end of the day, they might not be a customer. And if you just try and sell to them, like Ed said, his sales approach was completely wrong, but he listened and was able to evolve that and evolved his product. So just be aware of that.
Hello. Sorry, I have a question. I was trying to reserve and I'll wait for you guys to tell me. But yeah, I am. Anyways, I have my problem is trying to contact like a company or like basically like a company that's facing the problem that I'm trying to solve. So I'm trying to solve an industry-wide problem, but the advice I get is that I should scale that down and find a company that's facing such problems. But the truth is that the problem I'm trying to solve, companies may not even know that they have such problems that exist. So that's even one thing. That's a factor. Those that know that the problem
What's the
exists,
problem, pal? What's the problem they're solving?
trying to solve the rise of the bots. I don't know if you're aware of like what happened to the PS5, for example. That's like the most popular sample thing I can tell anyone. Like
Rise of bots.
yeah, rise of the bots. So
Right.
like yeah, so basically the what happened to the PS5 is the most popular example where people could not get their hands on the PS5, and that's because people were using people were buying the PS5 with bots online. So
Yeah.
and it's happening in all industries, basically, e-commerce generally.
Yeah.
So it's an
Yeah.
industry
So let's pause. So already, and we'll discuss this in a bit more detail when we talk about hypotheses. So the bots aren't the problem, right? The problem is that is that Sony aren't able to sell their PlayStation and make maximum profit. That's the problem, right? No one cares about bots, right? That is just happens to be what people are doing to game the system. So really what you're doing is optimizing and protecting sales. So already by better understanding the problem, if you're messaging an individual at Sony going, we know you're losing a huge amount of revenue by this process, we have a tool that protects that. Would you like to have a conversation?
Yeah, but that's the thing. Some companies don't even know that they're facing the problem. Like it's so deep
Yeah.
that, for example, you can have so many
So pause.
okay.
Again, the point of customer development is to validate what extent this is a problem, right? So is it such a small problem that they don't care? Is it a growing problem that's only going to get worse and therefore people don't know about it? And then if so, like to what extent is education a part of this? So then a part of your business has to be, how do I educate people about the extent of this problem? And that will apply to anyone here who's in a nascent market or kind of has first mover advantage, right? Lots of pros of first mover advantage, lots of cons, much longer sales process, lots of people saying, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you have to have laser-like focus on the solution. And then the next element to this is to anyone else selling to businesses, stop referring to companies as companies. Tell me who you are selling to, right? Head of data, head of sales, head of marketing, head of sustainability, head of IT security. You need to figure out that person, right? The higher up you go, great. The more decision-making power they have, the more money they have, but
Okay,
you have to prove immense credibility to get through to them.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, thanks for the tips. And I also want to add that like so for example, I noticed a company that's trying to implement solutions to solve the problem, and this is just from me trying to use their service, but the solutions that they're implementing has some drawbacks. So how do I go about contacting the company? Because I was on LinkedIn and I was trying to see if I could get maybe one of the exec members or the CEO or something like that, just to message them and tell them that I'm researching on this. I was trying to use your service, and just give them that and see if they would be eager to have a conversation. So like I don't know if you have any other advice or how else I could go about it, or if you can tell me how to contact companies, or I don't know, just general advice on that.
The single biggest tip I can give you when messaging enterprises and doing enterprise sales is you go, clear subject line, loss of revenue hitting Sony. Dear Howard, I'm aware of this problem. If you're not the person who's dealing with this problem, please can you forward me on?
Yeah.
Alrighty, we'll start formally in a few minutes, but if anyone does want to share any of their hypotheses or ask for any extra feedback, now is a great opportunity.
So it's been quite tricky to come up with these.
Okay, what are you finding tricky about it?
Just, I mean, I've come up with 3 out of 4, but it's sort of questioning what am I trying to find out.
Yeah. Or another way of looking at it is, what assumptions are you making about your business? Or what does your business require in order for you to be successful? That helps change the mindset a little bit, right? So think about, like, are people genuinely willing to spend money on this problem? How big is this problem? Do I know who's actually going to be the one spending money on this? A lot of people make assumptions about that purchasing power. Are you selling to someone buying a product for themselves, or someone actually buying it for another individual? Certainly if you've got a kid's product, if you've got clothing, it's often bought for by partners. And then if it's an enterprise product, like, what level do you actually need to go to sell to? And then where in the business? Yeah, and then we've got a hand up from, and how do you say your name? Is it Aris?
Hi, Mark. Yeah, it's my question. So a hypothesis. If I make an app, comma, young people will get involved. Is that a hypothesis?
Yeah. You could be more specific around what do you mean by get involved. But yes, it's a good hypothesis otherwise.
Thank you.
Cool. And then Robert, did you want to share one of your examples and get some feedback?
Sure. My first hypothesis is something that I used to do when I was in the industry. So I'm assuming it's still the case. The compliance staff in medical recruitment agencies spend a lot of time each month doing mandatory background checks.
Great. Yeah, great hypothesis. And again, you can judge whether a hypothesis is good or not, because it's something that should be yes or no, really. And then you're trying to then validate it. And the validation might be something like, 7 out of 10 people doing that role that you speak to say that is a problem, right? Or 70% of people, or whatever it might be. And then you might have other questions later down the line, which are, how much time do you then actually spend doing this, right? Cool. Would anyone else like to give an example? Or get feedback or questions?
I mean, I'll carry on with my second one then.
Please.
If compliance staff did not do those mandatory checks, they would spend their time on other tasks.
That's a great point. Right. If you are helping someone be more productive, but they have nothing else to do, then it's not really particularly important. Right. So yeah, great question. Great hypothesis. Do you want to do your third one as well?
Yeah, sure. My third one is quite crucial. Medical recruitment agencies have a budget for third-party solutions, because if they don't, there's no point.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a great one, because then again, when you validate stuff like that, you can then follow that up with who is the budget holder, right? And they'll tell you, right? Head of operations, CEO, head of something else. So Astrid, with the Google Slides, all you need to do is hit download or open in Slides yourself. So that my version of it should be locked, so it stays empty. So you just need to create your own version. My pleasure. And then Aris, your next hand up again.
I've revised my first hypothesis. You said, if I make an app, comma, young people will find it softer landing to get engaged.
Engage with what?
Is that better? Engage with the program.
Which program? Which program?
A program for recovery.
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
A specific a design for living.
I'm not sure if the signal's not great. I'm not quite hearing you, but if you can really just be really specific. So it's like, you know, my app will, or, you know, young people will be receptive to the app, right? Or that, you know, that's one thing. Or if you can go specifically, if my app can enable X, then this will happen.
So with these, oh, sorry, go on.
I just
maybe type out your question in the chat, or the hypothesis in the chat. I'm afraid we really can't hear you. It's really quite a dodgy line. Cool. Anyone else with their hand up? Right, so Howard, if you missed that, I think we've done all the feedback we need to on individual hypotheses.
Okay, perfect. So jumping on from there is it's about then finding and recruiting potential customers to talk to. Mark, do you want to keep on sharing your screen and just go through? Perfect. So I think we've already started talking about this and how you go and find customers to talk to. Mark used that great analogy of watering hole, and that is the key principle. So going back to that that first idea and the examples of using of the care home. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Cheers. There we go. Going on to the next one of if you want to speak to people in care homes based in London and elderly people based in care homes in London, families of elderly people based in care homes, where do you think you're going to be going? Because I can tell you, I was involved with a business that was starting up in the care home sector, so I know this. But where do you think some of these things are? Like, where and how do you think we're going to? Would you go to a university to go speak to these people?
I think you might go to a care home.
Right, okay, perfect, exactly. It sounds so basic, but people try and avoid it. Is like we said, is the things earlier, people go, oh no, I will speak. Mark's hypothesis of old people don't like to use tech. One of my co-founders tried to say, we'll create a survey on Google Sheets and we'll send it to them. I had to then explain to that person that that might not be the best idea. We're trying to get tech into care homes. It is be really clear with your hypothesis and statements, and then you know where to go recruit your customers and go speak to them and go to their watering hole. You're not expecting them to come to your watering hole. You've got to be proactive about this. You've got to go out and find them and where they will be. Okay? So thinking about that, and then where might you recruit interviewees? So thinking about this, it's similar to the hypothesis statement, and you've got to be very clear about this. So you're saying care homes, but then also you had a statement on there around elderly people, right? Okay. You want to potentially speak to people who have elderly relatives who are in care homes, finding out about them. Where can you potentially find them? Like you say, you're looking at going to care homes. This is then about expanding your network as well and being very aware of that. When I was I would go to networking sessions that had care home suppliers and owners in, and then I actually even went and did work and ran sessions around how to get businesses into care homes for care home groups. because it expanded my network. And then when we went for dinner that evening, I had conversations about them. How are you implementing it? And it's being and assessing your network and where you might recruit your interviewees. So on the next sheet we have on that, going back onto the spreadsheet, is there is around the interview recruitment. So starting to understand where that person might be, what their watering holes might exist, and then start thinking about the questions you might ask that person and their persona. We'll come on to personas in a bit, but thinking about the key questions you need to ask them. So this example, person on the high street who buys eyelashes, right, go to where they sell it. It might be outside Boots, Claire's. There's no point standing outside of Marks and Spencer's food hall. These are all seem really basic, and we're not trying to like assume that you're not intelligent people, but these are things that are so overlooked. Like people just go, I'll go stand on the high street. Well, no, go potentially angle it and find where they might be. Who will read the applications for shortlisting? I'll let Mark pick up the question. Right, okay. Do people understand what we're expecting to see on this new table of interviewee recruitment? Greater London Authority is GLA. Does everyone understand what we're expecting to see from interview recruitment? Yeah, okay, right, go. Right, you guys go and get on it. Like, we're doing this quick fire because we want you to develop. You smash the hypothesis, so give you about 3-5 minutes on this, but we'll be coming back straight back. And once again, we'll want people to say who or what their idea is and who they think their interviewee will need to be, and go from there. Go on, do you want to pick up that question there?
Yeah, good question, Andrea. As soon as you're doing anything with young people, go get yourself DBS checked. It's the disclosure barring service. Basically, make sure you're not a very dubious individual. You can use that as then, like most schools will need you to have that to be on campus or on site with them. And again, you want to arrange that with the school. Like if some person just turns up and starts talking to kids, then everyone looks at that as a very strange situation. Equally, if you're there with a clipboard and maybe you put a high-vis jacket on, you do look very authoritative with a high-vis jacket and a clipboard. People don't tell people off when they have a clipboard and a high-vis jacket. Just putting that out there. So again, this comes down to how do you actually get to the people you're talking to, talk to the school itself, get feedback from the teachers, ask them if they have a list of people that they might like to come and speak to you. They might even arrange this for you, right? Like if you say, hey, I'd be willing to come in and talk to your sixth formers about how to start a business or about whatever topic you can talk about, and in return I'd love to just speak to a group of 10 of them for 10 minutes and get their feedback on my business, right? Quid pro quo. Do things for people and they'll be happy to do things for you.
Absolutely. And also a great follow on from that in regards of speaking to children is something that Mark alluded to was, are the children your actual customers? Because there is something here around interview recruitment of understanding what detail you need from them, but also are their parents going to be buying their products? Because then that adds a whole different dimension in regards of customers and users, which is something you need to think of with your hypotheses, and also where you want to and how you'll communicate with interviewees. And we'll come on to that around how you recruit them, but also around the right questions to be asking.
Awesome. Who'd like to kick us off with some examples of interviewees, their watering holes, and what you might like to ask them?
I've said that there's actually a person that I've contacted before. They're a manager on the sales side at a particular recruitment agency. As for the watering hole, I don't know where he hangs about, but I know pretty much everyone in the industry does use LinkedIn.
Great.
So that's where I'm headed. And the question that I actually need to ask him is, who do I need to speak to about compliance budgets? Because I know he's not the right person.
Amazing. So for every one of you, as soon as you find one person who you can talk to, whether they're the right person or not, you should always ask them, who else should I be speaking to about this service? Because people will just tell you, right? Like, I don't work in care homes. I know Doug does. I know Howard does. Shall I introduce you to Howard? Right? Simple as. People will be open with their network if they are interested in what you're doing and you have a clear and specific ask. If you are vague and waffly, and I think you're going to be vague and waffly with my friend Howard, I'm not going to introduce you to Howard.
Really good. And also with LinkedIn, LinkedIn's evolving all the time. Look at boards, look at different areas, and also be aware, once again, of your network. Are they going and talking on specific networking groups? Just be aware of that. Anyone else want to put one they put forward? Right, if not, guys, we'll move on. Has anyone got any other questions about this? Right, okay, brilliant. Everyone's smashing it. Knows oh yes, Andre. That's you, Mark. Okay, right, moving on. So kind of tricked you there in regards of how you recruit them. So it's define what criteria you're looking for from them and speaking to the right people. Like Robert said there, it's great. He knows that is not the right person. So how and who are you wanting to speak to? Are you wanting a decision maker? Are you wanting to find out information? And what we were talking about earlier is finding those nuggets and actually starting to whittle down the audience of the interviewees that you might be wanting to get hold of and actually have those in-depth conversations with. Make sure that you make it very relevant to that person and that they can actually understand the ask. We'll come and show an example in a bit, but it's trying to get clarity for them and yourself. If you go, well, I'm potentially looking at someone that might be, no, I'm looking for someone that works in care homes. I've heard you are the right person. Is this correct? And we can go on and we can evolve and move from there. So that's how you go from it. Watering holes, once again, a bit harder in COVID times, like networking sessions. Used to be at 3 a week, compare spreads and then see how many the most handshakes and business cards you get to. But now it's evolving. See how you can change it. Speaking to people on the street, if they're in the right environment, are they in the right area you're just wanting to speak to? And it's great ways of bridging the gap and starting a conversation. And then finally, if you're not looking on Eventbrite, LinkedIn for all the different meetups near you and around you, then that is a great place to start because it starts whittling down the audience and going from there. Other areas, useful tools to look at are Scrappy and Calendly. So that can really help you start getting clear about how you want to book in and find those opportunities and speak to people when you go from there and organize your time. So Mark, if you want to throw up the example of what an email can look like of if you're trying to contact someone and get in front of someone. So this email is just really one about talking about people in care homes. It clearly defines what the challenge is, what area and why they're interested. Being that positive and charming person that Mark's just talked about is giving a bit of a real life story around around a personal experience. People buy from people and they want to talk with you and have a conversation. And that's where you want to go. But also being quite clear, you're looking at speaking to elderly people in London. And then what your overall goal is quite clearly states in this email: 50 care professionals and 50 minutes of your time. It allows them to know that they don't have to have a 10-minute conversation. That first conversation that you're looking at organising with them will immediately bear fruit from them, and you can start going forward. And like we said, using a link such as Calendly, it makes it fits in with their time rather than saying, oh, does this time work for you or does that time? It's quite clear. And then a mission statement as well, such as tackling loneliness, can really bind people together and go from there. So that is just one example of how we go from identifying and emailing out to maybe a bit of a cold contact, but also it gives all the information and makes them buy into what you're trying to sell. Right, I know we're flying through this because there's persona stuff we want to get onto that we're really keen for you hearing. So Something we talked about in the hypotheses as well is asking the right questions and customer development. What was the thing we said? Jumping forward. Yeah, go on, Mark, jump over. As you know, is wrong. Yeah, we all have our own slants and biases, and you are coming from a section with any startup. You're in the business day in, day out. You might not be seeing daylight, but all you've seen processing is around how that, for Mark, for example, of how the tourism and emissions crisis is affecting the world. So it sees its slant. You saw what he thought around ASOS earlier. It puts your slants and biases on everything, and it means that your vision gets narrowed. So you need to start expanding that and confirm biases that you know potentially are correct, but actually explore them and don't be, is this a yes, no? Looking and making sure you have open questions, and that's how you can evolve into a conversation. Oh, sorry, have I missed any questions in the chat there, Mark?
No, all good. I'm just responding to some questions, so just ignore all the bits. Okay, right. So yeah, example, you very much likely for confirmation bias, and it's trying to make sure you overcome that, and that you actually, once again, is listening to what your customers are saying, having that open conversation, allowing you to learn and build on and keep a lean product while you're starting to build up through this modeling and also customer development. Does anyone have any questions on that? No? Right. Mark, John. So 3 things that happen there is so much going on in the chat. Right. Like we said earlier, you're not looking to sell to that first pitching person. Pitching is off the table. Okay. It is just talking about and finding out their life instead of your idea. Be specific. Like we're saying is you've got to know the problem you're talking about. This does this. It affects your life like this. Okay. Not, oh, this could potentially change something if you did it and used it in a way. Be really clear, and then you can start expanding and knowing about the problem. Listen is that whole thing of how and open questions, and you will want it to evolve into a conversation because you will pick up and follow it. So many people say to me is, oh, if I go with a questionnaire, is that the right way? You maybe want 1, 2, or 3 questions that you want to start off with and starts the ball rolling. But more likely, a good customer development process is hearing what your customer is saying and picking up points that they would say and go, oh, is that how that affects your life? Is that how you use the product? Oh, you use your phone actually just for texting, you don't call. Right, okay, you need a really easy interface that allows you to message easier. It's not about it having the best phone signal. You don't use your camera, fine, okay. But focusing on what they're giving to you rather than going back to that bias that you might already have. Be prepared with examples of what is it specifically in your field. That area of, like, say, listening to what it's saying. Why do you use it like that? What is it? What's the benefit to you? Why is it that you ignore this feature from this competitor? And going and building. This is the hardest one. And like we were saying earlier, speak to your customers. Do not tell them about your product. I have a product which will sell more things for you. Would you like this? Yes. Great. So many people see that as customer validation and give it a tick box. And you might think, no, people aren't that stupid. Yes, they are. They will go, that is great. I've spoken to a customer. Goodbye. See you later. Don't lead them. Let them lead you and start finding out. You're wanting to remove those biases. You're trying to find how that problem is. And remember, not being scared of no. Mm. Don't lie to yourself. Oh, I heard them say that they might use it. No, they won't. If they're not interested and you've maybe pivot and go, oh, if I drop my price, and they still say no, you can't change and fit and be something to everyone.
And that's where you need to be aware and draw the line and go on and move. So it's about asking the right questions and having a conversation rather than just battering them and into submission. Because I've seen that as well. I've been on the end of someone just answering, going, would you like this product? Would you like this product? Would you like? Yeah, sure, great. And guess what? I've never seen that product on the shelf because people just don't buy it and go from there. Mark, anything to add?
I'd really hammer the asking why element. So easier to do in face-to-face or over the phone, like when people say no to you, when people give you other problems or things that are unknown to you, like ask why, right? Like Howard, why haven't you ever bought sustainable clothing before, right? Too expensive, don't know where, you know, I don't want to be a hipster, like whatever. If you ask why, you get to figure out these problems and you get to figure out, okay, Howard isn't my ideal customer, I'm not going to worry about him. Or actually Howard is my ideal customer, he just doesn't know it yet. Very different conclusions to reach, and you've got to get there by, you know, understanding it all with we say a lot of salt, right? More than a grain, to say the least, more than a pinch. Cool. So some good examples as well, like how much do you usually spend on fashion, Howard? Like how often do you buy clothes? Who else do you buy clothes for? Who buys clothes for you? What are the biggest issues you face around buying clothes, right? Like, you know, Amazon came out of a big part of it was just like a lot of people don't like going to shops. It's a waste of time. You end up spending more than you want. Negative feelings, blah 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 blah. Ease, convenience, etc. etc. Amazon it looks like an inevitable success now, but back then, like, oh my God, no, I want to have a product in my hand before I buy it, or oh, I like to go to Smith's in order to browse lots of things I don't need, etc. etc. And then how would you rank this problem is a really good way of putting it. So a lot of people might tell you it's a problem, but is it really, right? Yeah.
I think that Mark raised a really good issue earlier is, so you hear so much currently on the news that Generation Z are all about environment and sustainability. However, if a massive thing that has been seen in the fashion industry is, right, will you spend £30 on maybe a t-shirt that is ethically, that is just plain cotton, something like that, and actually you can trace it, they'll say no. And the reason is because the priority shift is they actually just don't have the money to spend that, because their current spending habits are that they buy a t-shirt every month and they can't afford a £30 t-shirt every month. Well, their priority is actually they want new clothes. That it's not about the eco. They're saying eco, and that's not a problem. It's just you being very aware of it and asking those questions to find out what the priority are. Because that question is, wait, if it was a better quality t-shirt and you kept it for 5 years, would you buy as many? Oh, I hadn't thought of it like that. And you're reframing the problem statement and understanding if your solution would potentially fit with them, but they might not be your early adopters. And that's fine, but it fits into your profile of customer development.
And really understanding the benefits and what your customers want. So some people do enjoy the physical act of buying clothing, which madness to me, but some people just love retail therapy. I get it, right? Other people, like, they only wear a cool shirt because they want to go get a date from the opposite sex or the same sex, right? Like, the point is they want to look good and go find a partner, right? That's really what you're solving when you're making great clothing. And if you can prove to people that awesome people aren't going to date you because you wear materials that are linked to slave and child labor, then yeah, that's a big reason to change your purchasing habits. I, for one, wouldn't date anyone that happily funds child labor. Which, when you put it like that, sounds like a pretty fair statement. There we go. Awesome. Howard?
So yeah, a good outcome. Really, you want to validate some of your assumptions. If you come out of a conversation and go, yeah, I was right on everything, I have nothing, my solution was the thing that they needed, something's gone wrong. You finding that perfect customer on your first initial interaction, like Mark said on the mirror board, your first engagement with the customer, the first business plan and engagement with the customer is going to be bloody. You're going to have to go through a wall. You're going to be chewed out. once again, that example that Ed found is that first criticism comes back at you, and it might be something that was quite fundamental to your business, and you've got to decide then if your business is solving that problem or actually you need to pivot and change that around. Yeah. Repeat the process, and then repeat the process, and that whole learn from what you've heard, go back and pump it back into your idea. The lean process is what we're trying to encourage here. You want to be speaking to more people and learning every time you do so. Okay, brilliant. Right, quite a clear statement. Draft your questions.
Yeah, I'm conscious of time, but if you do just a couple of questions that you might like to ask your interviewees, we'll run through a couple.
There's one thing that I need to find out from the people I'm targeting, and that's how many candidates they have on their system that they're running these checks for, because that will significantly affect what pricing model I go for.
Okay. So what do you feel the question should be?
I think the question should be, how many active candidates do they have on average every month?
Because also remember, it's at the stages. So your pricing structure, you're saying you want to do it in bands of, okay, how many candidates you have, you'll put it in this. But also at the same time, with that model, there's normally a break point of where actually it will get to 5,000 and it's the same cost for you. So you need to be aware of what that is. And also the question you need to be asking is, have you asked them what pricing structure they would like to see? What do other competitors or other platforms that they buy, how are they funded? How are you paying them? Or what is their subscription model that you have? Is it an annual? Is it monthly subscription? So that's all good, because if they're doing monthly subscription for you and then they suddenly have a month where it's really low, such as I think it's April is a really low recruitment month because everyone's going out at the end of the financial year, everyone's doubting it. So if you're on monthly, they might go, actually, we know it's going to be a quiet month and we'll drop you and then we'll pick you up again when we actually need you. Is that beneficial? So all these things can start coming out, but you're trying to work out your pricing model. You need to also be asking questions around how your pricing structure affects them as a business.
Fantastic, thank you.
Also, the good news is if your pricing model is wrong, your customers or potential customers will just tell you, because they'll say, hey, we really like this product, we want to purchase it, but we don't want to pay that much money.
Yeah. Normally,
like, if you say, do you do monthly billing? Do you do annual billing? Like, we'd rather just activate this and not worry about it, for example. Or they'll ask for other benefits that you haven't thought about. Like, can we run a report monthly? And you go, yeah, you can. That will cost extra though. Fine. Interesting.
So just looking at timing, Mark, does anyone want to put any questions forward they might do, or do we want to jump on to make sense of answers? We'll jump. Okay, right. So just similar on that of actually it's making sense of answers is literally just listen to them and actually what they are saying. Like we're saying, we wrote it there of if it's around how many people they have, well, actually, you're trying to find answers around pricing structure. Just be aware of what the path is that conversation is going down and being clear and make sense of the answers. Park it or get clarity. Why is that important? And it will start painting a much more of a picture the more people you speak to. Right, Mark, back to you about personas.
Yeah, when you're making sense of things, look for trends, right? Like, is Howard your typical customer, right? And then what are the frameworks or the parameters that make Howard Howard, right? Like size of his business, budget, the problem, the extent it is, et cetera, and also look at your outliers as well, and why are they outliers or why are they edge cases, right? I'm an early adopter in almost anything because I just get excited by cool things. So you got to take what I say as a real pinch of salt, because I live like 5 years in the future. So I might say I'll spend money on this, but actually, you know, a lot of other people are going to wait those 5 years until, you know, there's new tech for it to become more robust, better thought through, more resilient, whatever. And then you'll also have edge cases where people go, you know, climate change, totally irrelevant. I don't think that will drive any decision making. Okay, well, gratefully, you're now an edge case because the vast majority of people have looked out the window over the last few years. Anyway, next bit, personas. This is where you start taking all of that information and create a user persona. A persona is like your imaginary, as close to real version of your ideal customer. So it might well be Howard, or in this case, it's going to be Joan. So Joan is our 86-year-old delightful grandmother who lives in a retirement home. We've got her profession, retired nurse, salary, 140 a week, her pension, you know, watering holes. She's obviously in her care home, but where else does she hang out? Is she on social media? Does she read, you know, Woman and Home in her magazine? Like, what magazines are delivered to care homes? Find out and then see if you can get in those magazines. We have her goals, because you've now spoken to her. You now know that she wants easy to use as the #1 benefit for keeping in touch with her family. She wants to learn new tech skills, reduce her sense of loneliness, you know, feel more connected and a happier, better person, right? What motivates her? What are her frustrations? How does she solve this now? Maybe it's a battered phone from 10 years ago. Might well be. Maybe she has an iPad but has no idea what to do, etc., etc. So the way you do this is you might start by building your persona with kind of guesses. Maybe you put them a different color, you put a question mark next to it, or you write brackets assumption, and then you go off and try and figure these things out one by one through all those hypotheses, through all those questions, and through customer development. And then once you have this mapped out, you're then going to go and sell to Joan, right? Or you're going to test your product with Joan, and then your next version of your product, your MVP +1, etc., etc. And then eventually, ideally, Joan does become a customer, whilst also representing all of the other mid 80 somethings, men, women, whatever it might be. And then you will be, no doubt, thinking, how many customer personas should I have? Try and separate it into clear and distinct customers, right? So Howard, small business owner with a team of 20, Mark, small business owner with a team of 20, we're the same bucket, right? We're the same persona. Howard, by contrast, with a team of 150, maybe completely different bucket. Maybe same bucket, and your bucket begins at 250 people in the business. Yeah. I don't know. Same for purchasing products. Have you got a man purchasing it for himself in his mid-30s, 40s, or is it a man purchasing it for a woman, or anything else in between, right? It's up to you to kind of figure that out and build a couple of different personas.
That's really key, guys, that you look at what the key elements of a persona is, and that if you do feel like another one's coming in, compare them and really write them down. This is a really good framework, and go, well, actually, this is really similar. It's same gender. Oh, actually, sewing with her frustration is dementia and shaking hands. That's within Parkinson's as well. Okay. If it's someone that's actually ended up going into a retirement home early and actually has been adopting tech for the last 10 years, that is a different persona because they don't have the same barriers. And it means it's later down the line, it's also knowing where you are on the journey that feeds into your sales pipelines and how you'll go and go to market strategies that will be key. So it's vitally important that you don't create a profile for everyone. Bang, bang, bang. You don't need Joan, Philippa, Judith, but actually, well, this is what this group looks like. Oh, and this is someone that's maybe a smaller group of people, but actually, like I say, is tech people now going into care homes at 70. They've been around tech longer than people that have been around in the 80s. And it's a 10-year age bracket, but it means frustrations are different. And just being aware of that and how it'll affect your go-to-market strategy.
Absolutely. And then be sensitive to the questions you're asking. Get it checked by some friends. I see lots around people ask for my salary. I don't really want to give my salary to some random person I've just met. But if you say, what salary bracket do you fall into? Yeah, people will answer that. You know, 0 to, and just do it via the tax thresholds. And then people are used to ticking that box on a regular basis, right? Or better yet, ask me what my spending, like how much do I spend on, you know, non-rent living things on, like, or like how much do I spend on luxury products as an example? Because if you're selling fine art, you're not just competing against me purchasing fine art. You're competing against me purchasing wines, whiskies. You might be competing against me buying my house, or buying paying for my wedding, anniversary gifts, that kind of thing, right? So actually think about how you phrase the questions when you're trying to get specific information. So it's a bit of a two-way process. You kind of do your first draft, you know, almost look through the answers or guess what the answers would be, and then actually ask, are these answers helpful? And then you kind of tweak and refine the questions. And if you keep doing that, you'll start getting lots of great information. You'll start having your amazing user personas. You'll start feeling comfortable that you genuinely understand the problem as well. And again, building confidence when you're running your first business does take time. But when you feel super confident that you are solving a serious problem that affects a good number of people, then you will just feel much better about your business. You'll feel more confident that what you're doing is worthwhile, you're building the right solution, and that you will be able to get other people on board to help build the business with you as well. So with that, we are coming to the end of the session. As next steps, please do start drafting out the persona, do go over all those interview questions, start figuring out those ideal first people you're going to speak to. I really recommend you perhaps go and only just speak to 3 people to begin with, see how they get on with your survey, tweak it, get to your next 3 or 5, and start scaling it up. And you'll also find your mate, like, don't do a survey and wait for things to happen. Do other things in your business at the same time. So you start making sure that the business is moving forwards in lots of directions and learning in lots of different areas. So you keep diverging and then converging and kind of doing this and having really awesome growth. Awesome. So it's been an absolute pleasure today. If you have any final questions, now is your last opportunity, and then we will all run away for some dinner and whatever else you have planned this evening. Yeah, the recording will go up. We just put one of the recordings up from the 3 sessions, so you might see other people in the session. The slides will go up on Miro as well. Please make sure you ask for feedback in the Mighty Networks in particular. We've got lots of awesome mentors this year who are there to help support you, answer questions, provide insights.
Glad you all enjoyed it. Once again, any final questions? We always have this.
Yeah, please bookmark the Miro board. I'll post the link one more time, but and it's also kind of gone out in emails. It's also oh, there you go. Dan's already done it. Brilliant. So we'll be using that each and every session. Amanda, yeah, you got a quick question?